Hi, my name is Melissa Giles, and I am going to make a video about how do you connect your mind with your heart. And I have to say that this is one of the hardest things that you can do because there's so much stuff that goes on in our mind, right? And it's like what we choose to listen to in our head. And it's hard, when you get to a certain point in your life and you're that you want to do something different. And that you can do something different because you're holding in your heart what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And, and then there's other outside sources, whether it be who you hang out with, your environment, the energy, at work, the people that you deal with, the people that you see on a daily basis brings in, either doubt or how do I say, either doubt or it's the negative influence that we are around. And I haven't really been around a negative influence for a while now, moving here to Austin. I've been by myself for quite some time, and I'm okay with that because I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I do know who to hang out with, but I haven't reached that point yet. So what I'm trying to say is that it's hard to connect your mind with your heart when there's so many things that hold you back, whether it be just your own self-talk or, for me, it's been my own self-talk, knowing, I know the things that I should be teaching, and today that starts. And so I had a dream last night, or before I went to sleep, was God, get some rest, and then tomorrow there is a plan. And so when I woke up this morning, that totally happened, right? So, when we get these thoughts or when we get these ideas in our head to do something, then you must act on them. And a lot of times we don't act on them. And that's one of the things that keeps us from it holds us back, right? Not only does it make us not reach our full potential because we're not producing that thought, we're going with the other stuff that's going on in our mind, saying, fear, you can't do that. Our procrastination, oh, I'll do it later, that type of thinking. So I'm going to start teaching what I know to be true, and I'm going to start doing those thoughts, those things that come into my mind daily, because I know who I am. There's no doubt. And there's a lot of information stored inside me that I've kind of kept to myself selfishly. And so with that said, this particular video is going to be, how do you get your mind to meet your heart? And this is something that I have to work on, and I think that teaching it will help me help you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that when we help one another, even if we're going through a difficult time, helping somebody else makes you feel good because you're actually helping them. And along with it, you're helping yourself. So that said, I'm just going to read from the Bible. The Bible is my heart, truly. And it makes me cheer up just a little bit because without the Bible, I don't know exactly where I would be. And without God, I don't know where I would be. And, 10 feet under, if you will, not 6 feet under, but 10 feet under. This kind of mindset is really, really hard to keep. And I've been there and then backslided and then gone there and backslided, and been there for a while, been there and felt joy and would never go back, and then backslided. And that's just the human being. And so it's basically the mind and the heart is really, it's the spiritual world versus the worldly world, right? It's the flesh meeting the spirit, and it's hard not to live by the flesh because of the energy that is surrounding us. Not only the stuff that we tell ourselves, but it's the energy that is surrounding us. And, a friend of mine said on a call that I was just on, that you can, I totally forgot now. See, that's the kind of stuff that happens. Where was I going with that? I totally forgot. And that's for me, that's the spiritual world that comes in. It's like, you're not going to say that, and this happens to me a lot, things will come up in my mind, and this may happen to you too, I don't know, but things will come up into my mind that are so important to say, or I'll get a thought in the shower, where I don't have a pen and paper to write something down, or I'll be at work to where I can't do a video, or a blog or something like that, or I'll be listening to something and the most important thing that is said, I don't get it, I don't process it because my mind goes blank. And that's the spiritual world that we live against, right? Especially when you're surveying whatever it is for you, spiritually I serve God, and I know that God is everything. He's the universe. He's everything. He's the plate that we eat off of. He's the house that we live in. That's God to me. And the reason why that's God to me is because he made people to make those things, right? So, that's why he made people to help people. It just goes on. I can go on and on about that, but everything is God. And when you realize that everything is God and everything comes from God, it brings you to a different level spiritually. And it's that part of it is hard too. So with the negative spiritual world, it comes into your thinking. It says in John 6:16, that the devil will rule the world. Well, the devil is our mind. This is another video. But the devil will rule because we will go into worldly thinking, and it takes a really strong person, if you will, to really realize and really surrender to a spiritual thinking. And it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard. And what's even harder is fighting the battle that goes on in the other spiritual world. My friend was saying, there's an energy field between us and God. So it's an in-between world. And it's true. It's true. And depending on what you're doing, what you're putting into your body, what you're thinking, what you're producing in your mind is what's going to attract that kind of energy. And it's true. There's no doubt about it. And with that being said, that's what holds us back. And I get that, and you guys should get that too, because it's true. Especially when you know that you have something inside of you, and you work on it and work on it and work on it, and you don't think that you're getting a result, but in fact you are. And that's hard to understand too. But you are. Just know that you are. So I'm just going to jump into Romans chapter 7. I've been doing a little bit of teaching on YouTube. I think it was on YouTube a while back, and starting at the first chapter of the book, because I feel like for me to understand the book completely, then you have to know all about the book. However, with this particular thought that I had after I watched this call, I want to talk about how do you get your mind to meet your heart, and how do you become the person that you were made to be. How do you know that you're becoming that person? And I just want to speak on that because I do know how you become that person, and it's the battle that I hold inside, and it's the battle that you hold inside that delays that, right? So I'm just going to start with chapter 7 because it's kind of leading into chapter 8, and then I'm going to stop there. Okay, so each one of these things that I'm going to read pertains to the Ten Commandments. And when we start abiding by the Ten Commandments and we have the heart of gold, the heart of love, then everything else starts to fall in place. And I can honestly say, not conceitedly or not boasting about it, but I can honestly say that like I am a pure image of that. And like in time, as my story starts coming out to the things that I've overcome, then you'll see how or God made me that perfect example for people to see the love that He has, right? So that will come later, but however, I'll just start with this now. So how do you get your mind to meet your heart? Okay. So we have to must love our God with all of our heart and with all of our soul. That's the key to it, right? Like every day I say, Father in heaven, and maybe like a lot during the day, I love you with all of my heart and with all of my soul, and He knows that. And I'll say always, forgive me of my sins every single day. And that's important too, because it's taking personal responsibility for what you're doing with Him. And then within yourself, eventually it becomes within yourself as well. So every day, as He thinks of us as a new day, as for me, I think that my every day is a new day, and I'll forget about tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but the day before, because that is the new day for Him, so it's a new day for me. All right, so first of all, like love your God with all your heart, with all your soul, no matter what. So it says, chapter 7, or do you know, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know the law. And we're talking about the spiritual law, okay? So it's a spiritual law meeting the flesh, okay? So your mind is the flesh and your heart is spiritual. Your heart will become eventually to meet with God, right? So I'll just make that. That's the law. So the law is the Ten Commandments, okay? The Ten Commandments are based on like the morals and values of God and how He thinks. So, 1 through 5 is Him, that's Him. 6 through 10 is your neighbor, is loving your neighbor. And the Ten Commandments honestly are written, they're written for the law, the spiritual law. But they're made for us to sin. They're made for us to sin. They're made for us to realize what God is and what His mind is. And then they're also made for us to love our neighbor. Like if we want to become one with God, one with Jesus, who is God, who is ultimately the universe, if we want to become one with Him, we have to realize why the Ten Commandments are made for us to sin. So that's kind of hard too, because we're like, oh my gosh, for me it was, why are these made this way? And this kind of goes into my journey with spiritual warfare, which is also another video, that He taught me through my journey, the Ten Commandments before I even knew them. And when I realized the Ten Commandments 5 years later, I was like, oh my gosh, I totally get it. But He taught me the Ten Commandments before I even knew them. He renewed my mind to be of Him before I really knew what the law was. And then ultimately, the law is faith. But it's the battle between the mind and the flesh that becomes the problem. So with that being said, I'll just dip into this real quick. I do apologize for that. I know this is going to be kind of a long video. I hope you stick with it. So I'm just going to keep on going. So, or do you know, brothers, for I am speaking to those who know the law, that the law is binding on a person only as long as he lives. For a married woman is bound by law to her husband while he lives, but in her husband dies, she is released from the law of marriage. Accordingly, she will be called an adulteress if she lives with another man while her husband is alive, but if her husband dies, she is free from the law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. And God talks a lot about adultery, but He also talks a lot about how do I say, it's based on faith, like adultery is looking at another person being, even in like a little relationship or even a big, like a big relationship. This is why we are supposed to find our soulmates before we marry, so that we don't end up divorcing. Because when you find your soulmate, you live with God, like God brought you guys together, and when he brings you together, then there's nothing that can break that, because he's the one that brought, right? So that in a marriage, it's binded together. Like the two minds are binded together and makes one mind with God. And so the reason why he talks a lot about marriage and adultery, and why he made the 10 Commandments, do not commit adultery, is to bring people together so that they have faith in God, that when a problem comes up in their marriage or in their relationship, that they turn to him and say, God, how can we fix this? And that's why we should pray before we marry, and not jump on that first person or whatever, to have that relationship. And that's like the whole foundation of do not commit adultery, is faith in really praying for that person. Because just looking at somebody else is a sin and adultery. So he talks a lot about that. So accordingly, she will be called an adult. I'm just going to go through this really quick, because I didn't realize it was right here. Likewise, my brother, you also did this. So likewise, my brothers, you also have died in the law through the body of Christ, so that they may belong to another, to him has been raised from the dead, in order that he may bear fruit from God. Okay, so accordingly, she will be called as an adulteress if she lives without another man while her husband is alive. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law. And if she marries another man, she is not an adulteress. Likewise, my brothers, you also have died to the law through the body of Christ, so that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. And that's, like that person, the person that is living in God to the law of marriage. But that guy, and I'm like not saying dead, like you died, it's like saying dead to flesh, right? That's what that's saying, is being dead to flesh, so that we may bear fruit from God. Right? When we live in the spiritual realm, and we're living by our heart, which is God, and not living in the flesh. And this is why I like these chapters, because it explains why. So I'm on chapter 7. Okay, sorry, excuse me. Romans chapter 7, verse 5. Okay. For while we are living in the flesh, our sinful passions aroused by the law, we're at work to our members to bear fruit for death. So our members is our brain. That's what the members are. The members is the worldly world of thinking. But now we are released from the law, having died to But now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we serve in a new way of the Spirit, and not in the old way of the written code. So basically what that's saying is that like we grow, right? This is pertaining to the Old Testament. So there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in the Old Testament that that is still held in the churches, right? So we must grow, where are we going with this? We must grow spiritually. The old way of the written code is the Old Testament, right? So the world is growing in many ways. Like, they don't have dirt roads like in horse wagons and like parlors and that kind of thing anymore, so the world is growing. And so when we're being released into that's old thinking, okay, these are like the generational curses. These are it's the old way of thinking. So we grow new, right? So each year is a new year, but we have these generations of stuff that has been going on that leads us down from our forefathers, who is Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob, right? And so when we become new into our thinking, this is like how you change your way of thinking. This is the start of how you change your way of thinking. That when we go into the new way of thinking, that we're forgetting about the old way of thinking, right? So we have to get rid of that old written code, that old way of thinking from the generations and generations that was passed down to us. And it's hard, it's not easy. And doing that, building that relationship with, whatever it is, that's something higher than you, higher than yourself, whatever, I'm not even going to suggest, like whatever it is for you. For me, it's God. For me, it's the universe. For me, it's Jesus. For each one has a different meaning to people, to beings, right? And because everybody looks at it in a different way. So, however, whatever it is for you, for me, it is God is everything. He is the universe. He is Jesus. He is everything. And because everything comes from him. So I'll say that over and over and over again. So the old way of thinking is getting rid of those old generational curses, the old things that, your dad, my mom, your mom, even their brothers and sisters and greats and great, 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 and great, 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 and great, 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 like you get the drift, right? It's that kind of stuff that trickles down from generation to generation. And for those generations, I'll say like for my generation, like my great great grandfather on my dad's side was a priest or a minister. I don't know. He was a minister. And so like I'm sure my great grandma, well, I'm sure that she found her purpose. She wasn't religious. She never preached the Bible or anything, but she was the first seamstress of Colorado. And so she was very successful at it. And that was, she was born in 1918. So, but she had lived a hard life, and she's a very angry woman. But moving on from that, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about right now. So because she didn't do it, her daughter didn't do it. Her daughter, my grandma, actually ended up killing herself. I'm just going to use these as an example of this generational curse. So she didn't do it, but my grandma was religious, lived here in Milford, Texas, and I lived with her for a long time. And so she didn't do it, but she was religious. We went to church every Sunday. If we didn't go to church, we had to watch Dr. Schuler on TV. And it was the Power Hour that I'll never forget. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, So when God says that if you do these things, if you do these things, you're going to be blessed and you're going to get everything. This is what's called heaven on earth. You're going to get everything that trickled down from that generation to that generation to that generation if you're the one that gets it. Okay? And it's hard to get the mind to match the heart. But through all of these years of generations, it's been said, it's been taught, and nobody's taking up the universe or God as the offer. And when you do that, then you get all of that in return. And that's what heaven on earth is he blesses you with those things if you can do this new way of thinking. By now we are released from the law, having died to that which held us captive, so that we serve in the new way of the Spirit and not in the old way of the written code. Okay? And that's what that means. That's Romans 7. 7:6. Okay, so this minute's 25 minutes long. I don't know if I should stop or not. Okay, so Romans 7. So in order to get rid of those old ways of thinking, is for one to know that you're chosen. If you have a thought in your head, and this is another video too that I plan on making, so I'm not going to really say a whole lot about this, but when you have a thought that comes in your head and you take action on that thought, not knowing exactly where it's going to go, then there's a meaning to that. And if you don't give up, no matter how long that it takes, it will eventually, it will manifest itself to a new reality. And then it's like you taking action. And that's where I'm at right now. I get it. I know it. And I haven't taken any action. And you may be feeling that way right now, like you're not putting what you know to be true or what you want to teach out there for it to manifest, to come back to you. And that's why we have to get our minds to match our heart. And when you know who you are, but you're not being that person on a daily basis, it makes it hard, right? It does. It makes it hard. So with that being said, so number 7, then what shall we say, that the law is sin? By no means. And that's like, no, the law is not sin. It's recognizing it, right? It's recognizing that it's been brought to us. That's why it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's our fault when we don't take action on what is being taught to us, through motivational speakers or whatever comes to you on a daily basis, right? So by no means, yet if it had not been the law, I would not have known sin, for I would not have known what it is to convey if the law had not said, you shall not convey. And that's commandment number 9. And I meant to write these down, that's another video, but let me see. Just for those, and I have to even look to see what it is, but give me 1 second here. So commandment number 9, right, is you shall not convey your neighbor's house. You shall not convey, that's 10. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So a lot of, like I said, the last 6 of the 10 commandments is your neighbor. It's about your neighbor. Okay, so you should not be envious or jealous. So, but sin, seizing an opportunity through the commandments, that's number 9, produced in me all kinds of covetousness, for apart from the law, sin lies dead. I once was apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin came alive and I died. That's like died, like you're still living by flesh. The very commandment that promised life proved to me to be death to me. Like we realize that we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to be jealous anymore. We don't want to be envious. We want to love our neighbor, our parents, our whoever. We want to love everybody. That's what that law says. It's love. It's the love for everybody. And when it's proved to be death in me, then we no longer spread hate. We no longer judge somebody. We no longer do those things that we know once you know that commandment, and that commandment is placed in your heart, though it's hard sometimes not to do because that's the worldly way. You do it, right? And that kind of mindset is hard. You know, like 1% of the population will actually go into that state of being, and it is a definite state of being. The very commandment that promised me life to me, death to me, which like, yeah, cool, you know, and I don't want to be that way. That's not how God is, you know. I really, truly don't want to be that way, and that's what I say. That's what I say all the time. Or people who are mean to me, or don't like me or whatever, I just say, Father, please forgive them, for they do not know what they do. They don't know the law, you know, so how can I judge them? I can't judge them. I can teach them, but I can't judge them. For sin, season, and opportunity, because I once used to be that person. You know, I once used to be that angry person or that judgmental person or whatever. I once used to be that person. And knowing the law and being one with God, I don't want, you know, even when I fall short and do those things, as far as like not showing that I love everybody at certain times, you know, it's like a guard, you know, because it's all based on faith. So why wouldn't I do there's certain things that I know that I should be doing with other people, and like, okay, well, if this intention of that person has that intention, then let them have that intention, because I know that I'm protected and I know that I should be doing the things that are being put forth to me. And you may be feeling that way too. I don't know, you know, whatever it is for you. And that's something that I have to work on too. So let's see here. So for sin, season, and opportunity through the commandment deceived me, that through it killed me, right? I start feeling guilty about it. So the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, and the righteous and good. And it's obeying that commandment, okay, right? We're talking about commandment number 9. And it's I wrote in here, obeying that commandment. So do that which is good, then bring death to me? By no means. It was sin producing death in me through what is good, in order that sin might be shown to be sin, and through the commandment might become sinful beyond measure. And that's what we just talked about. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh. Sold under sin, right? Sold from your forefathers. Sold from generation to generation, you know. We're sold under sin. We were born in sin, whether your parents obeyed the 10 commandments, you were born in sin. I was born in sin. I'll just use me as an example. My parents were drug addicts. They were, that's all I need to say. Okay, I was born in sin. My mother sinned when I was in her body. I sinned when my kids were in my body by being jealous and envious and, you know, not being secure in my marriage and, you know, like just so many things, you know. I brought my kids into this world being sinful because of my thinking. My thinking was the flesh, where I did not know the law. I did not know this law. You know, and it doesn't make me wrong by doing it. It doesn't make you wrong by doing it. It's just that we don't know. And if we don't know, how can we do something that we don't know? So I'm going to keep on going. All right. So, but which is good, then brings death to me. Oh, yeah, I just read that. Okay, cool. All right. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am of the flesh, sold under sin. Okay, cool. I just read that too. So then it's like we have to be reborn, right? So then we start getting this thought. I think I was rebaptized in, when was I rebaptized? I was rebaptized in 2013. And I didn't even know really the true meaning of being, you know, like baptized. Like, what was the true meaning of me being baptized? Because afterwards I went back to almost, not everything. But I believe that the point of me being rebaptized was just to have that greater connection to my higher power, which things just kept on getting worse, if you will. Worse, if you will, in a worldly sense, like the relationship I chose to be in, the things that I chose. It's just the things that I chose, right? Like he was just like, okay, Melissa, here is even a better connection with me. And here I'm going to show you even more. I actually even ended up homeless afterwards. So with that being said, that's another video. For I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very things that I hate. Now, if I do what I do not want, and I agree with the law, that is good. So now it no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells within me. So being baptized is like, okay, you're reborn. You are now feeling like you are the body of Christ. You are now having this bigger connection with me. And so now if you're going to make these things, if you're going to be sinning the way that you're sinning, that's fine. I'm still going to be here for you, but I'm going to teach you even more. But it's no longer worldly, because we now know, right? We now know what the spiritual realm is. We are now connected. We have the teaching of being connected. And so now it becomes free will. Okay? So it's no longer now that the sin dwells in me. If you were asking yourself why you're doing the things that you're doing, when you have this when you have this feeling in your heart, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to live this way anymore. If you have this thought, if that thought is entering your mind, there's a reason for it. And it's living by the flesh. It's living by your own worldly thinking. It's living by your thoughts that are going in your mind. That's what that is. And it's a better calling. I invite you to listen to another video that I'm going to be doing later on today about this, because there's a reason why we're chosen. And how do I say, Father? It's when we start feeling that way, when we start having those questions, why am I doing this? I know what the outcome of it's going to be, and then our flesh takes over, and it's a sin that is dwelling in us because we already know what the law is, right? So if we already know what the law is, but yet we want something different, it's because our heart isn't meeting with our mind. And our heart is God. And if you will, the thoughts that come into our head of, you can't do this, you can't make a video, you can't divorce your husband because he's beating you, or you can't, not cussing at your kids. Like, I don't want to treat my kids that way, or for me, I don't have my kids right now. Like, I want to be with my daughter. I want to have a relationship with my other daughter. And it's those voices that say, you can't. This is what's coming against you. Your dad is coming against you. His wife or his girlfriend's coming against you. All of these different things that you did. That's what I hear. Anyway, that's not true. It's not true. So I'm going on a 38 minutes. Okay, should I stop? No, I'm not. Okay, so let's see. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is my flesh. For I have a desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out, right? So that's what I just talked about. For I not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I keep on doing, right? So this is what I just talked about. Now, if I do what I do not want, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin dwells in me. We just talked about that. So I find it to be a law that when I want to do right, evil lies close to hand, because God is like renewing your mind. The devil knows that you want to do something different, right? And so he's seeing you like subconscious, so this can go spiritually or it can go religiously, however you want to look at it. Spiritually, it's like it's your conscious and your subconscious mind. I can talk on both, okay? But it's like your spiritual mind and your subconscious mind that is you're realizing that you want to do something different, but your subconscious mind is like, no, you're not going to do that. For God, it's like, I'm renewing your mind. Come with me. Now you don't have to live in that worldly thinking. You can live in the spiritual realm, but it's going to be hard. For I delight, this is one of my favorite verses. For I delight in the law of God in my inner being. Okay, so that's your heart. But I see in my members another law waging war against the law of my mind and making me captive to the law of sin that dwells in my members. Our members is our brain, guys. And let me tell you something just really quickly before I end this video. This has been one hell of a ride. I am not going to lie. Like, this has been crazy. This verse right here is so crazy in a sense that it has almost made me crazy mentally. And I don't even know how to really explain it, voices, demons. I don't know about that. I wouldn't call them demons because I'm so close to God that I don't feel like he would do that to me because I love him so much. And at the same time, I feel like maybe he brought just a little bit in to get my attention. And I'm willing to accept that. Because I'm not doing what it is that he wants me to do. There is, one of the commandments is you will not love anything. You do not make anybody your master. My master seems to be, seems to be alcohol and cigarettes. You will not serve any other god. And those are gods. And if you're serving other gods, then you don't love me. For I am a jealous God, he says. That's one of the commandments. Anyway, the members is the thinking, okay? And if we let our way of thinking get in the way of our heart, then our mind and our heart, they don't meet. And that's hard. It's hard. So wretched man that I am, because we know, who will deliver me from this body of death? And thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I myself serve the law of God with my mind, but with my flesh, I serve the law of sin. So now we know a part of how the mind is working at this point. And we know that it's our heart, that God is our heart. So I'm going to end this video and then start another video, leaving off at the end of chapter 7. So it'll be Romans 7:25. And then I'm going to jump into Romans chapter 8, where it's going to explain a little bit more about the mind. And how the mind is working with the laws. So it's the law of sin right now. It's the law that we know that it's not our fault because it's passed down from generation to generation, right? And we know that we are having a dream or a calling or whatever it is for you to do something different in your life. And so that we know that that is from our heart, but our mind is telling us something different. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I'm going to start with the next video. And yes, that's what I'm going to do. So thank you for watching. If you want to, please leave me a comment.